And here we are once again, my brothers and sisters. I want to welcome you to another Living Hope Today study. Today is such an interesting chapter. We're in 2 Chronicles chapter 10, and you could just read the story, and it would be educational, and you'd learn a few things, but underneath this story is a principle of spiritual life that is just profound. I hope we can bring it out fully in the text this morning. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You get to 2 Chronicles 10, and you remember, I hope, that Solomon is now dead and gone. Rehoboam is Solomon's son. And so now we hear a little story about Rehoboam. Okay, he went to Shechem for all the Israelites. Notice that the kingdom is still united. It was united all through the reign of Solomon. Okay, for all the Israelites had gone there to make him king. All right, Solomon dies. His son is going to succeed him. Rehoboam's the one. Okay, we're going to Shechem. We're going to anoint him. Well, when Jeroboam, and we're going to learn a little more about him in a minute, when Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard this, he was in Egypt where he had fled from King Solomon. He returned from Egypt. Now, Jeroboam was no friend of Solomon. It started out pretty good, but they had a falling out, and we'll see that in a second. So they sent for Jeroboam, and he and all Israel went to Rehoboam and said to him, notice, verse 3 is important, all Israel. What are we talking about? We're talking about all 12 tribes, the whole group. Okay, your father put a heavy yoke on us. But now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how King Rehoboam is going to reign. Solomon was really hard on the people. He conscripted them. They built his temple and his palace and whatever else he decided to build. They're just saying, hey, could you just lighten up a little bit? We'll be happy to serve you as our king. All right, well, Rehoboam answered, come back to me in 3 days. And so the people went away, and King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. Elders, supposed to be wisdom, right? How would you advise me to answer these people? So Rehoboam's starting off pretty well. He's asking the elders for advice. Help me understand what I'm supposed to do. Well, they replied, if you'll be kind to these people and please them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. Hey, you can keep the kingdom united. Hey, you can have a peaceful reign over this whole group of people. All you have to do is just show a little kindness. But, here we go. But Rehoboam rejected the advice the elders gave him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. Okay, so you old guys don't know what you're talking about. Let me get with some of these hipsters, these young guys like me that know what's going on. Well, he asked them, what's your advice, and how should we answer these people who say to me, lighten the yoke your father put on us? Verse 10, the young men who had grown up with him replied, tell the people who have said to you, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. This is an arrogant reply that basically illustrates the fact that I have all power and I am going to do whatever I want. And he says, my father laid on you a heavy yoke, and I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, well, I will scourge you with scorpions. You guys want me to lighten up? Well, forget about it. I'm not only not going to lighten up, I'm going to make it worse than it was. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam as the king had said, come back to me in 3 days. The king answered them harshly. Bad. Rejecting the advice of the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, my father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. So he takes the advice of the young guys and he tightens his discipline against these people. So the king, here we go, watch this. So the king did not listen to the people. Listen, for this turn of events was from God to fulfill the word the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. So wait a minute, time out. What is this telling me? God is hardening Rehoboam so that Rehoboam's free choice to either be kind or to be more oppressive, from Rehoboam's perspective, this is just his choice to make. But from God's perspective, God's overseeing the choice and sovereignly fulfilling his word to Jeroboam. Well, what was that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's go look at 1 Kings 11. And I invite you to read that whole chapter if you really want to get into this. But the Lord became angry with Solomon. Okay, so this is Rehoboam's father, the king that just died. Why was God mad at Solomon? Well, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Notice this. Solomon, you have great experience with God. You've been in his presence, literally speaking to him twice. Right? You should have great reverence for him, but instead, you know the story. Solomon's turned away. He's worshipped all kinds of other pagan gods because as he intermarried with all these pagan women, he was led astray. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's commands. So, okay, king, God blessed you with wisdom. God blessed you with possessions. And what happened? You took all that God gave you and went out of bounds to disobey God flagrantly. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Now this is interesting, right? Because the Lord has promised that the line of David is going to continue. But the Lord is now telling Solomon, because your disobedience, you're so far out of bounds, I'm going to tear the kingdom away from you. I'm going to give it to your subordinates. Nevertheless, here it is, for the sake of David, your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Okay, so what's happening here? God says you're going to be judged for your disobedience. I met with you twice personally. I gave you everything, and you disobey. Well, just notice this one thing. Rehoboam's mistake is more than just simply political arrogance. Like he's going to oppress these people because he can. Right? His mistake is also God's fulfilling his promise to Solomon regarding the judgment deserved for Solomon's flagrant disobedience. God's sovereignty is at play here with Rehoboam's free will choice. We see it in action. Let me just go on in 1 Kings for a minute. Just farther down in the passage from where we just read is this. About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem. So this is the same Jeroboam that we're seeing in 2 Chronicles 10. And Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Why do you suppose there were 12? Then he said to Jeroboam, take 10 pieces for yourself. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, see, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. Well, we have the advantage of knowing history, and we know that the northern kingdom is about to separate from the southern kingdom. Israel is going to be divided. Now there's going to be 10 tribes to the north, called Israel, and 2 tribes to the south called Judah. All right, well, God's predicting this through the prophet Ahijah in 1 Kings 11. This is what's going to happen, Jeroboam. You're going to get the 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David, again, notice in these passages, God continues to remind us that his promise to David is going to be fulfilled, even though the subsequent actors are so disobedient. God is still going to find a way to keep his promise. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. What's the tribe where the king comes from according to the Old Testament? Well, Judah. You know that, right? Okay, so there's going to be one tribe left that's going to honor David, or continue his line, I should say. God goes further in 1 Kings 11. I will give one tribe to his son, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I choose to put my name. All right? Again, later in the chapter, I will humble David's descendants because of this, because of Solomon's disobedience. I'm going to bring judgment against them, but not forever. All right? God is going to faithfully maintain his promise despite the disobedience of his people. Solomon and Jeroboam were enemies. If you recall, I said, well, listen to this. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, all right? But Jeroboam fled to Egypt. That's why he was in Egypt here in 2 Chronicles 10, to Shishak the king, and stayed there until Solomon's death. So this is just a little background for you, but I want you to see one more thing. When God's telling Jeroboam he's going to allow him to rule the northern kingdom, he says this to Jeroboam: if you do whatever I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes by keeping the statutes and commands as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build your dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. What does God want? Obedience. Obedience. So just notice, as we watch the monarchy crumble in 2 Chronicles 10, we're going to be watching the fact that Solomon didn't do what God wanted, and neither did Jeroboam. They both forsook the Lord when God had clearly promised either one of them a peaceful reign if they would only obey. So back to 2 Chronicles. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king. So now all of Israel were all combined and were talking to Rehoboam. What share do we have in David, and what part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel, look after your own house, O David. So all the Israelites went home. This is telling us the fracture is real. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, Rehoboam still ruled over them. So Judah, the tribe where the leader would come from, right, from the line of Judah, the scepter never departs. Guess what? They agree to submit to Rehoboam's aggression, or oppression, I should say. All right? And they stay in the Davidic line. The northern 10 tribes, as predicted in 1 Kings, go with Jeroboam and make him king. We'll see that as we move forward. King Rehoboam sent out Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, but the Israelites stoned him to death. So the king tries to take his power north and make those people submit to him, but they kill the guy he sends. King Rehoboam, however, managed to get in his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. We end here today. Just remember this. We think we're making our own choices and doing whatever we want. And guess what? From our perspective, we appear to have free will. But God is sovereignly in control, and he will use our choices, even our bad choices, to bring about what he wants. We're going to see the kingdom ripped out of Solomon's hands, in the sense of his descendants are going to go down to one tribe, all right, Judah. And Benjamin's in there too, but Judah is the one that's in focus here in 2 Chronicles. In the end, the kingdom divides, and the sins of Solomon are judged. And now we're going to find that Jeroboam and Rehoboam, neither one is willing to obey the Lord, and they're going to be a decline. We're going to see a decline for the next, 19 kings or so. It's really rough. But we'll try that as we meet again next time. God bless you, church. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past.